Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tadaima, Terrace House Podcast, your weekly companion to your favorite show on Netflix. I'm Robert Scarpanito, and I'm joined here by Daily Wilhelm,
Konbanwa,
Jack Cepeda,
Irashaimase,
and Colin Sparling.
Hello, everybody. Hope you and yours are doing well.
And we have a special guest this week, actually. You may have seen his Terrace House videos floating around the ether on YouTube. But this week we have on the mic, fleshmonk.
Woo.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, hello. Welcome to
What's
the
up,
fold.
man?
Hi.
Yeah.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Thanks for coming on, man. How are you, Fleshmonk? How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I woke up, I ate some food, and now I'm here.
Sustenance
Hey, that's
matters.
the life, man. No, yeah,
Finally, some fucking food.
we flew him out to our studio in the sky, and we're all here together recording.
We're in the Terrace
comfy.
House heaven right now,
Yeah.
among the clouds.
Yeah, because our show makes enough money to fly people out.
Definitely.
No, but I mean, so what we've noticed with just in general, like being in the Terrace House community for a while now, is everyone has an interesting story with how they kind of started watching Terrace House. I was kind of curious, Fleshmonk, what bug bit you to get the Terrace House virus?
So me, I think I just watch a lot of videos, and I watch a lot of videos actually during work. So
Nice.
I just like go through a bunch of like YouTube video essays, and then I got to this video where it's like Netflix doesn't understand the internet by, I forgot who did it, but it was just called that. And then when I watched it, it was just about how Netflix's like VPN stuff interferes with how people watch Terrace House because of like the binge format versus like the weekly format that they do in Japan.
Ooh, definitely.
Yeah, and then I watched that and I was like, oh yeah, this is good. And I was like feeling all sad and stuff. And I heard about Terrace House and like a couple of years ago. I was like, oh yeah, I'll watch this. And so finally I was like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll watch it. And I just put the first episode on, and then after the first episode, things just slide out of control. And now I'm making Terrace House videos.
it's hard
That's
to
how
stop.
it goes, man. You start with one, you're like, I don't know, and then you watch two, you're like, okay. And
Yeah.
then next thing you know, it's been 7 episodes. You're like, I can't stop.
It's kind of like drugs.
Yeah.
First one's
it's free.
Damn it. No,
Y'all aren't
I
paying for
totally.
Terrace House? No.
I know, right? No.
Wait, what?
We're all sharing
tell
Robert's
anyone.
Netflix login.
The password's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
I mean, my password's just password.
But no, I totally, Fleshmark, I totally identify as well too with the way that Netflix doesn't quite understand the internet, because it definitely causes us a little bit more trouble than I wish it would. The fact that there's just different release schedules, there's even different like release methods. Like I guess it's a weekly show. You know, sometimes they take a couple breaks in Japan. And here in America, they dump on, now for this latest season, either 8 episodes at a time, 12 episodes at a time. And then like you have to decide, am I going to binge it? Am I going to watch it weekly? Us doing a Terrace House show, it just introduces a lot more challenges because we're trying to cover the show as best as we can, but we also understand the audience might be enjoying the show in a different way. So it's definitely not optimal, and it creates those weird kind of rifts in where everyone's at, right? You always have to ask, so where are you at? What episode have you seen? Like there's not like a shared experience here where, we know every Tuesday or whatever the show's going to drop. And so it gets hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I would also like, oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
I would also like to note that like it didn't even take that many episodes for me to like get into it. It was just like Makoto like sits down and he's like, wow, like this house is so nice. And I was like, oh man, I'm gonna like the show. Like I don't even know what it was. I was like, he just like sat down. He's like, wow, this is nice. And then someone pointed out his pit stains. He's like, oh that sucks. And I was like, oh,
That's a pit
man, I'm ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing is like the beginning of a season of Terrace House is I think it does a good job of setting the tone that this is unlike any other reality show you've ever watched. You know what I'm saying? No other reality show is going to take that first episode that slowly, right? And you're actually watching people like adjusting to the new surroundings and commenting on it, and just them having that very first awkward interaction in the house. I just don't think you get that in any other TV show, because you can tell that like these are just real people that so happen to be recorded.
Yeah.
I've actually never watched like I don't watch anything like Big Brother or like even like Survivor or anything. I don't know any reality shows. I only watched like a cooking show or like 2 cooking shows, and I watched like a couple episodes of Queer Eye, but I don't really like watch any of the other stuff that Terrace House is even comparable to. So I had no frame of reference.
Well, it was more so in passing for me, but I think Jack, you watched a lot of Real World, didn't you?
Yeah, growing up. And like, that's the thing that I love about Terrace House is that it gave me something that I didn't even know I wanted yet until I saw it. Right. Because I started out with reality TV. We've, talked about it many times, but back in the 90s, right? I'm a little bit older. So I was watching like the first 10 seasons of Real World, and I was really into it at the time. But if you told me, even like, I started Terrace House, 2017, 2016, somewhere around there.
But even if you told me like
ago. Yeah,
it's been like 84 years.
But even if you told me, if something like this existed, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, and you said, hey, it's just Real World in Japan, I would have been on board right away, but because I did watch some of those earlier reality shows too. You mentioned earlier Temptation Island, Survivor. I even tried to dabble in Big Brother, but it just kind of was shitty of a show, so I really, not to mince words, it's just a shitty show. But so I just didn't get that much into it. But certainly when it started getting, reality TV started getting a little, I guess smuttier is the word, is where it just turned me off. Like Jersey Shore, is the one that you go to. And just, again, it just kind of crossed a lot of lines with me, and it just turned me off to the whole genre. I think Osbourne's was the last one I really was like watching, week by week.
Yeah, Osbourne's is my reference. I watched a lot of Hogan Knows Best too. I forgot about
that. That probably hasn't aged well. Yeah.
No, not at all.
See, what's funny,
and then
for me and like in my friend group in Ohio, a lot of us didn't like any reality TV shows at all, right? Like period. Just all of them were bad to us. And then for one reason or another, we started watching Terrace House, and then we were like, I don't know what this is. I don't know what it makes us feel, but I like it. And I'm going to keep watching.
Right. It's a weird thing.
It's giving me feelings. And then we had to convince Daly to get on board and watch this show with us, and then eventually podcast.
Okay.
On top of that.
Yeah. So my experience was, and I think that you might be able to relate to this, Fleshmonk, in the way that I like anime. I've been a weeb for many, many years, since I was a teenager. Not to call you a weeb, but you like anime content as well. And I really like slice of life anime. And that's kind of how I had to approach Terrace House, and thinking of it as like a slice of life. Because otherwise it was like too wholesome at first. It was like, oh no, I'm like secondhand embarrassment. Like everyone's so nice to each other. So I just had to kind of think of it like, oh, well, it's like, everyone's nice to each other usually in slice of life anime. I can think of it that way. And then like you said, like after a little while you get hooked. It wasn't Makoto that hooked me though. We have very different opinions about Makoto, let me tell you.
Oh yeah. Oh, we do.
I the first time like they all come on screen, I was just like, all right, okay. So I just automatically, I don't know what drew me to him. I was like, Makoto is like my guy. And then the opening starts and you see him like he's like pitching, and I was like, oh man, he's so cute, it's great, he's the best. and then everyone, wait, am I allowed to talk about what happens in Boys and Girls in the City? Or
yes, that's
we've already covered all of it.
Yeah, we've seen the whole season.
Okay, so like, and then all the girls like, oh yeah, like I'd pick him too. And I was like, oh yeah, my boy is like, he's killing it. And then like 2 episodes later, he's like texting people things, and I'm like, what are you doing, dude? Like, come on. And it just,
he's kicking up drama.
So sad.
For me, with him, it was the beer and Kit Kats. It was a very subtle nod, but then I was like, okay, hold on, that's
my
not
favorite combo.
That's not the diet of a champion.
The diet of a champion.
Man, you never just like sit down and munch on some beer cats, man? Come on.
Hey, Fleshmonk, just remember I bought you these shoes. I just want you to remember.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So you owe me a date.
So you owe me a date.
It was so romantic. Completely.
Oh man.
So yeah, so just curious here, for our audience listening now, Fleshmonk, have you done podcasts in the past?
Absolutely not. I think I tried to start a podcast like once or twice, but overall, zip, nada, no experience.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to our show. This is really cool to do, and so
Yeah. And
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And to
of
be
course,
fair,
man, we hope your podcast experience here is a positive one.
See, and to be fair,
try.
though, we've been doing this for 3 years, and I'm pretty sure we still don't know how to podcast.
Yeah, we don't know what we're doing. It's just all a shame.
We've been described as monkeys throwing rocks and sticks.
I mean, I still don't know what certain words mean. People laugh at me on the show. You guys laugh at me on the show for misusing words all the time.
Yeah.
So this what I will say though, to turn this into a positive, is the show is teaching me new vocabulary.
Yeah, life is about learning. So I kind of want to turn the conversation toward your breakout video, the big one, the big Terrace House one that everyone has seen. I think it's up to like 20K views right now on YouTube, and it's only growing, I imagine. Nice. But it's about the therapeutic nature of Terrace House, and I kind of was curious, like, where did that idea for that video come from?
So I was really sad, like, and I was like really in like a dark place, and like I was in like a house like by myself because other people in my house were like on vacation or something, like a very long vacation. So I was just like sitting at home every day, and I was like doing like YouTube stuff, but I was kind of in a dark place. I hated my job, and everything was kind of like on the downward slope, and I just like started Terrace House, and it was just really comfy, and really helped me like feel good, and helped me like, it helped distract me from like other things that were like more negative. It kind of just like helped me like cope with my life. And then it was like really relaxing, you know, like I came home every day, I like watched some Terrace House, like I cried sometimes and I was like happy other times, and overall I was just like really into it, and I was like evangelizing, I was like going everywhere, I was like telling my friends like watch this, and it was like really good. And like when you watch it, you feel like you're making friends, and you feel like you're connecting, and then after all that happens, it's like really nice. It's like a nice little support system, except they don't know who you are and you're just watching. But it works nonetheless.
No, I mean, I totally agree with that, in that when you watch these people, you know, there's that layer of, you know, typical reality TV stuff where, you know, oh, who's going to get together with who, you know, what's the drama that's going to ensue and all that, right? Like that's still kind of present in Terrace House. But a lot of what I found too in it is that there are moments where you kind of just feel like these are just people. They're just doing what they do. They're forging relationships how they would. You know, sometimes those relationships work out. Sometimes they really, really don't. You know, we occasionally see like fights that happen on Terrace House, but they don't feel like fights that are, you know, contrived or anything like that. Like you'd see in American reality TV, they're fights that could totally blossom between you and your best friend, like realistically, you know?
Right. No one is going to get in a fist fight on screen or anything like that.
Hopefully.
That we know of.
Yeah, that we know of, but nothing's ever gotten that heated.
You
like,
know,
it's less about the spectacle.
It's interesting to think back to like how I started out on the show as well too, and I think it's like word of mouth, right? I think that's how the show's spreading, because no one, I don't think, has seen a Terrace House commercial. Have you? Like, you know, outside of turning on Netflix.
Yeah.
Right. There's just very minimal, you know, marketing out there for the show. It's really about word of mouth, and that's how we all learned about it. Robert started it, and we got Daly on board, and you know, so it's interesting to hear that. But at the time when I started watching Boys and Girls in the City, that was my first introduction to the show. I didn't have any other shows going on either. You know, I wasn't like, oh, this is my weekly, you know, kind of my hit of entertainment. I didn't have anything like that really, and so Terrace House was just so bingeable, and it was just so different than anything I've ever seen before. And to really call it real world in Japan is not doing it service at all. It's so much more beyond that. You know, I mean, it comes down to, I think, the cinematography. I think it comes down to it's I mean, so much of it is food as well. Is a big part of that. So if you're a fan of food, you know, you've got that there too. But I don't know. It's just it's a general vibe, a general comfortable feeling until it doesn't get comfortable, right? There's going to be some drama. There's going to be some tears. There's going to be some real character growth. Hopefully, you hope for. And yeah, and so that's all part of like the nucleus, I think, that drew me closer to the show and just had me hooked and watching, I don't know, 12 episodes a day or whatever.
Yeah, I think for me it's also really about like the palette, like you said, like the cinematography. So like with the color grading and with just the way that they approach like how they furnish the house and how even like the people dressed. Like I don't know if they had any say with like producers or like their wardrobes, whatever, but everything was just very like chill and very like almost like pastel, like just like very calming, very soothing. It wasn't like really bright like in your face. It was just like, oh yeah, here are the people and here's the house, and everything's kind of just like a nice neutral color. Everything's very easygoing.
Yeah, until I had watched your video, I hadn't thought about that. Like, there's no place in the house that I couldn't, like, just, like, I'm just going to lay down and fall asleep. Like, even in the kitchen, like, it still feels, like, nice and calm and soothing.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot of, like harsh LED sort of lighting happening. You know what I mean? It's not whole lot of white light. It's a lot of more...
warm light.
Yeah, exactly. Like warm light, a lot of really relaxing, not too bright either. It's just I don't know. And that plays into it because it's funny if you look at even our thumbnails a lot of the times on YouTube and things like that. It's because it's always that warmer color palette that a lot of the colors in our thumbnails even blend in. But that's just a sign of like I don't know if it's intentional that way. But I mean, in terms of like a living space, they prioritize making it a comfortable living space for the people living in the house first, and made the quality for the cameras second, which is a positive and a negative, but it also makes it, I feel like it's better that way for the interactions that happen in the house for the people to feel more comfortable.
Yeah, I don't know. I think like there's a lot to really like about the show, and I know in the past we here at Tadaima have aired a couple grievances perhaps about the show.
Just a few
grievances, but
just a touch. At
the very least, there's a reason we all still do this, right? Is because not only do we like it, but there's this calming nature about it that you don't really find in many other media. You know, I don't know. It's something that made me think about this a lot recently. Actually, was there's an op-ed posted on Kotaku.com by one of their writers, Gita Jackson, about the Bon Appetit Test Kitchen on YouTube, and basically how their show, it's not a cooking show, it's just a show about watching coworkers interact, and they're all really wholesome and friendly and nice, and it sells this idea of, I like watching people be nice to each other, and that made me think that's what Terrace House is in a way.
For the most part.
I think,
yeah. There's incidents here and there, but I think the vast majority of it is... The Terrace House is a show about the beginning of friendships and sometimes the beginning of relationships too, and how that interaction plays out with roommates. So it is cool to see. It's sad to say, but it's like, oh, I'm glad to see people being nice to each other. I don't get enough of that, right?
I don't get enough of niceness. There's not enough kindness in the world,
right?
I mean, yeah.
That's kind of it. I mean, I think that Terrace House is fulfilling something that people didn't know, or I guess we as fans, that we didn't know we needed in a TV show in some ways. And I think that is a big reason why you get on Netflix and Terrace House, whichever season tends to be trending, like, right? It's a popular on Netflix, and Terrace House is often one of those shows. And so I've noticed too, everyone that already knows about Terrace House that I've talked about is usually some sort of brand evangelist. Like, you know what I'm saying? Usually people that watch Terrace House, they're all about it. They tell other people about it. You know what I'm saying? It's just a very easy to market sort of show in that way. It's pretty much for everyone. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say something that really frustrates me about the way Netflix handles Terrace House is that there isn't some place that I can just buy official merch. And it really, really, really bothers me because I love the show, and I was like, oh man, like after like 10 episodes, I was like, I want to buy like a Terrace House t-shirt or a Terrace House sweater or like something. I looked up Terrace House merch, and all I got was like Etsy stuff.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I can't, there's no Netflix official like Terrace House mug or anything. There's nothing, not even like a sticker. It's just, that's it. And nothing.
Yeah.
No, that's a good point. And they really are sorely, I think, just lacking in marketing this outside of Japan. In Japan, the show's very popular. It's big. I'm sure there's, an official website and everything like that. But like if you go to terracehouse.com right now, it's parked. Like they don't even own that domain. It just seems crazy to me. but I'm sure someone's holding on to it, waiting for some big payday or whatever. But it's that just goes to illustrate even further. No, it's not. But it goes to demonstrate even further just how they're missing out on this opportunity here, because the show is, growing internationally all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're recognizing it though. I mean, in more recent seasons, they've been like, "Oh, international, like hello, international viewers."
A little shout out, yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, but I will say though, the people on the show certainly have their own merch if they have their own brand. I'm thinking of Kenny-san and T20.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, there you go.
Yeah,
but
no
and then
spoilers for Fleshmonk.
Yeah, and of course, Eden Kai, aka Yusuke, he has his own merch, that sort of thing, to support his music.
Wait, so Aloha State, like, what is it? You've only watched like 10 episodes, right? Daily?
Yeah. I'm behind.
Yeah, okay. But everyone else has like watched like Aloha State, right?
Yeah.
I watched the whole thing 2 years ago, yeah.
I don't know if you've noticed this in the first 10 episodes, but like the 88T stuff is everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
To the point where I was like, okay, like did she have to sign like a contract where it's like, oh, okay, like I'm on the show and like all my merch is on the show? Because I was just so confused. It's like 88T is sponsoring Terrace House.
Yeah,
it's so weird.
It was kind of very prevalent. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel like
it
draws away from like the pureness of the show?
For me, not really. I was just really curious as to why it just kept showing up. Because I was like, oh, 88Ts, like that makes sense. And then everybody was wearing it, and then it just kept happening. I was like, I don't know what the deal is. Like, I wish there was at least some sort of like brand advertising thing where it's like I knew that they were just part of that, or if it was just Avian just giving everybody free shirts to wear.
Here, take the shirt. How about you wear it? How about right now?
No,
yeah, I mean, either way, it's free promotion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure that brand has since blown up quite a bit.
I mean, you see it occasionally on the Terrace House subreddit, people being like, hey, I visited Hawaii, and hey, I visited 88Ts, and I took a selfie with Avian, right? It's like, yeah, they're only doing that because 88Ts shows up so much on the show that's a name that's ingrained in their brain.
Punchbowl Social also is very prevalent on Instagram right now as well, and people just posting up, just going right to the front door, right to the driveway of the house, and taking pictures too. That would be annoying if you live there.
Yeah, I mean, but it's I mean, that's the Terrace House bump for you, man. I mean, same with Sasa and OND, same with the coffee shop that Mizuki works at. From
Fleshmonk. We coined that as the Terrace House bump.
The Terrace House bump.
The Terrace House
is
bump.
what it's known as. Just promoting your whatever
everyone
brand
who
you
leaves
have
the show.
Take that opportunity.
They come to the show, but they leave far more popular than they ever were. Because
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I remember I would check like Instagrams, and like everybody has like over 100,000 Instagram followers, unless you weren't that popular. And it's just so crazy because I think that people, and this is something that's like weird, because I think that when I started out, and especially with Boys and Girls in the City, I was in love, and I was like, oh my God, like this is like, it's so real and it's so unscripted and everything's so pure and wonderful. And then like after a while, like when you start to like consume more content, when you like go on the subreddit, right, or you go behind the scenes or something, you look up stuff, and it's like, oh, okay, like people come on and they say like, oh, I want to be a firefighter. Oh, is it like I want to be a firefighter, or like, oh, I want to like do this, and then they leave and then they do something else and they have like 100,000 followers on Instagram, and I'm just like, oh man, that's like crazy how being a Terrace House like even derails what they might have wanted to do, whether or not that was like real or not. It's just like, I want to be an actor. It's like, nope, you're just going to do brand sponsorships on Instagram now.
Yeah.
That's
interesting.
Like,
that's it. That's all you can do now.
Yeah.
No.
Like I love.
Yeah. So
like Armand went from wanting to be a firefighter to, I think, didn't he do like production assistant work on a recent Netflix show? Like the Naked Director, I think.
That's what he's doing nowadays.
Yeah. I'm curious how much the Terrace House fame got him closer or further from that.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've noticed already, Fleshmonk, but it doesn't stop with the whole like housemates wanting to be actors or actresses, or the housemates being models. Like that's a pretty consistent thing. It's usually like, oh yeah, I'm doing this thing. Also, I'm a model.
Yeah.
Also,
I'm a construction
model.
worker and a model. That's real.
Yeah, Hikaru.
Yeah.
Oh, Hikaru.
But one thing I want to talk about a little bit too when we're discussing kind of like the therapeutic nature of Terrace House, focusing more on boys and girls in the city here, is that one thing that I didn't even realize excuse me, one thing I didn't even realize was happening when I was watching that show was that it was kind of changing my frame of mind, like my worldview in a weird way during the time I was watching Terrace House. Meaning that what is normally not that big a deal in my real life or in anywhere else I go in the world, it kind of becomes is more amplified in Terrace House, right? Like it kind of resensitizes me in a way where so much stuff out there in the world, you look at Twitter, you look at the news, you look at political climate, it kind of desensitizes you to a lot of things as you turn your head the other way. Whereas Terrace House really puts a microscope, puts the house and the people under a microscope. And so things that aren't necessarily such a big deal, you know, again, just become amplified on the show. And so in a way, it kind of like helped me, like, I don't know, just kind of like, I don't want to sound too like kumbaya or whatever, but like kind of like return to my center in a way where like, oh yeah, like this stuff matters, you know, manners, etiquette, you know, being clean, being a good person, being a good roommate, being, you know, just achieving your goals. I mean, we haven't really touched on that as yet either, but like where you are in your life, what you want to do, the steps you're doing to achieve your goals, and that support system around you of friends is a really big part of the show. And I've never seen it or done, you know, I've never had a show like that before. And so that really, again, during the time I was watching Terrace, just helped me, I don't know, feel comfortable in a weird way. It's like a warm blanket, like a warm cup of tea as a show. And I think that all contributes to that. So I'm just curious to hear everyone's thoughts on that. But you too as well, FleshMonk.
I love that kind of stuff. I think back in college I was RA, which is like, it was resident assistant. So I was in the dorms and I was like helping out like other college students and stuff. And I would do like conflict resolution and like roommate contracts or something, like, because like girls would always leave like passive aggressive post-its and then guys would just be dirty all the time.
And then guys, yep.
And I think that being away from college, like you kind of, well, when I was in college and I was dorming, I was like very social. I like saw people all the time. And like when you're out of college, I don't really see people that much anymore. Like it's very narrowed down to like a specific like group of people. So like when I was watching Terrace House, it kind of felt like I was like an RA again. It was kind of just like, oh, okay, I'm seeing all these people and I'm low key, I'm like shipping people, or I'm like seeing how it'll turn out. And then when they have conflicts, I'm like, no guys, like that's not how you're supposed to resolve things. Like, no, you're supposed to like, like, you know, like really talk to each other instead of like, I don't know, like throwing pillows or like writing things in rice or even just saying like, huh? Like every 2 seconds. Like, Nachan was so frustrating. Oh my God.
Oh, Nachan.
Let's go there.
But she's not even like, if you compare her to like any like villain or anything in any other sort of like movie or TV show, she like isn't even like a drop in the bucket. But in Terrace House, she's like evil to me. But it's so small. It's so sensitive, you know, like when she's like, oh, I don't really care about other people. Like in another show, it'd be like, okay, who cares? Like who has the gun? Who has the bomb? But then for her in the show, it's like, oh my God, this is a big deal. This is going to mess up the whole dynamic of the house. And it's like,
yeah. I mean, they're real people. They're real people living together. And she's someone who, I mean, it seems like she'd be pretty difficult to live with. But it's funny because we actually, when we went through the episodes involving Nachan, when we were reviewing BGITC, so that was the second time a lot of us had seen the show. And upon second viewing, I think, at least for me, I viewed Nachan in a sort of different light. Like, yes, a lot of the conflicts that arose with her were frustrating. But at the same time, I think I understood where she was coming from in some ways, too, where she was like, hey, like, I'm trying to get to the bottom of this conflict right here and right now because I don't want this relationship to be a fake one. I remember, I think that was when she was talking to, I can't remember. I think it was either Minori or Misaki. I can't remember which.
She had so many
like,
conflicts.
Yeah. I mean, and there was a lot of them, but I also respect the idea that she's like, hey, I don't want this to be a fake friendship. Like we're living together and like, I want to get to the bottom of this like now. And so like, and I think when she, they're trying to get to the bottom of what Nachan's about, when Hansan confronts her, she's like, it's really hard to change. Like she has a full blown breakdown on TV. And I think that's just very humanizing. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so to see that and be like, hey, it's hard to change. Like, yeah, fuck yeah, it's hard to change. You know what I'm saying? Like, I may not agree with you, but I agree with you there.
Yeah, I think Nachan's biggest trouble was she treated every relationship like a work relationship. Because if it's a coworker relationship, like, yes, you should get down to the bottom of any disagreements you have because you both have to work together. You have to produce whatever product you need to have at the end of the week or whatever. So anything you do to iron out the process helps. But when it comes to just friends hanging out or roommates hanging out and living together in a house, you don't necessarily have to iron out everything ASAP immediately. If it's a good friendship, that kind of happens organically. But what's, I would argue, more important in a good friendship is this idea where you feel comfortable with that person enough so that you tackle the kinks together,
Hey, kinks. Sorry.
No kink shaming.
No kink shaming.
No kink shaming.
But any other thoughts on Nachan? Anyone?
Okay. Okay. I have thoughts.
Oh no.
So I get what you're saying, Colin, in that like stuff like it's hard to change, but I totally agree with Fleshmonk in that like, because it's like, I guess the bar of evil is like so low, the bar of like scandalizing, acts is so low that stuff like writing, like coward in someone's rice stands out as like a huge event in the season. When she like, I remember for like an entire week, I was just like scandalized, couldn't believe it, was talking about it with people that had no idea what show I was watching. Like I was just like, she came on to this guy. She made like a burger, a bento, and like took it to his work despite knowing that he has a girlfriend. What the hell?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that was my big scandalizing moment of Boys and Girls.
Yeah. And it's not to say I don't like necessarily have a problem with Nachan. I mean, I definitely like, she definitely made quite the ruckus. I'm just saying that there were moments in there where like, I think upon second viewing, I think I understood her a little bit better. I think is what I'm trying to say.
For me with Nachan, it was always not about, hey, let's find some common understanding. Hey, let's be friends to have these real strong, real genuine relationships like she kept claiming. To me, in practice, based on her words, her deeds, her actions on the show, it was more like, hey, get used to what the fuck I am doing.
Yeah.
Be okay with the things, be okay with the way I am because it ain't changing, but you need to learn. Like, you need to change around me. And that was that was her ultimate downfall, and that's why I think she gets the sociopath label. Not necessarily saying it's inaccurate based on what we see on the show, but it is good to see though. Like here in the long term, I think it was recently posted that she is married now. She has a kid now. Like kind of happy ending to her. Yeah, so that's awesome. But man, her time on the show on Terrace House, it was scary, but I really appreciated the drama for my own sick enjoyment, I guess.
Yeah,
I can't imagine what it must be like dating after that. Like you just like meet someone and he's just like, oh yeah, so I watched Terrace House, and she's like, okay, but like I'm different, I swear to God.
Let me explain.
Like,
yeah. like there are some people out there, I don't want to call anyone too far out, but like when they leave the house, you're almost like, wow, what's the rest of their life going to be like? Holy shit.
Yeah,
don't want to be that person,
Yeah, and it does make it kind of interesting to keep up with them, though, right? Especially the ones that are still on Instagram, because there are a few people on BGITC who have kind of dropped off the face of the planet. I think Misaki has done that, right? And Bert.
Oh my God, yeah, she's my favorite, and she just disappeared.
Yeah, I'm very curious what happened there, but at the same time,
still at that coffee bar, I think.
Yeah, no, that's Mizuki, the early one. Yeah.
Oh, no, Misaki, the Ibisku Muscat.
Yeah, who dated Burns?
Yes,
Burns.
Got it.
Yeah,
Yuki Bonds.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's kind of like, it's one of those things where I want to know what happened to you. Like I want to see the end of credits. Where are they in 7 years from an 80s movie about them? But at the same time, it's like your time as a public figure on Terrace House is over. I have no claim to your personal life. So if you want to delete and nuke your Instagram, I can't stop you. I wish you well.
Yeah. I'm like a really really, really, really nosy person. So like I like understand that like you're supposed to have your own life and stuff, but like I don't care about that, man. Like I want to have like a camera on you at all times. Like I want to know what you're doing. I think that's the thing that made me so sad about like the end of Boys and Girls in the City. It was like, oh man, that house is off limits now. Like I don't know what happens in that house. I don't know what happens to all these people. They're all just they're off like living their life. And I was watching it like 3 years in the future, and I felt like I was like a time traveler, and I was like checking their Instagrams now, and I was like, oh my god, like Burns, where's Misaki? And I was like, oh, like Martha, and I'm like what's happening? What's happening? It's so sad.
Burns crumped her out of his life.
The end of the end of Boys and Girls in the City is very, very emotional. I mean, they're all sitting there crying at the end. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of emotional parts of that season. So that was one of the better endings. Also, I think the panel goes into the house at the end too.
Dude,
what was that like for you, Fleshmonk?
It was so crazy because I think at that time like, oh man, it's really over. Because like the only reason they'd be there is if there's no one there. And I think it's one of those things about Terrace House that I don't really get. Having finished two seasons, not to spoil anything from Aloha State, but I think they handled the ending for Boys and Girls in the City a little bit differently than like how I would have handled it, or how I think traditional like American shows like might have handled it, because it was very much like there wasn't a real big send off. There wasn't really like a big like wrapping up thing. Like I honestly thought that it would have been great, or I was expecting like not just Hansan and Nachan to come back, but like for everyone to come back in the house or something like that, or like for there to be like a last picture of everyone's like waving by, or like even the hosts and the people they're interacting. But at the end of the show, it's basically them just being like, okay, yeah, let's see what happens in the next part, and then they leave the house, and it's like, okay, Aloha State, here we go, yay!
Yeah, it's just like close one book, open up another one. It
was like really fast. I almost got like whiplash. I was like, oh my god, I'm like crying now. Like, aren't you gonna console me with my tears? And nothing happened.
Console me, damn it!
I like the way that those end though, because it's not like Survivor where they have like a reunion. Does Survivor do a reunion episode at the end?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, but I feel like that's a thing, right? I've seen those before.
Bachelor does a thing. Bachelor and Bachelorette does like everyone's on talking, sometimes talking shit.
That's cool.
Yeah,
of course, because it's American TV. But yeah, it's I'm kind of glad that Terrace House doesn't do a reunion episode, because Terrace House doesn't. It's not structured in a way where here's all the 18 people that'll be on the season in the first episode. It feels like it is a rotating cast. So in a way, it feels like, if you've been working at a place for a long time, maybe the coworker that you started that job with isn't going to be the same coworker that you end that job with. And that's just life, baby. And you might maybe make them meet, you might be like, oh, hey, the guy who worked here before, you'd love him. Like, we should hang out together, grab a beer. But it doesn't have to happen that way. Just kind of like on Terrace House,
Yeah. I think also seeing people's Instagrams and seeing people like hang out like afterwards, I'm like, oh, that's great. And then it's also like, man, I wish that people would appear more, because they're still in Japan and they're always just like, oh yeah, like let's meet like outside of Terrace House. And they're like, yeah, sure. And I'm sure like Hansan and them hung out while he wasn't in the house. And it's so strange because I wish that I could see some of that. And
yeah.
Well, at least we get the tidbits that we do on Instagram sometimes.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, it's always really refreshing when it's to see that those relationships are still going and a lot of people are still successful. But I mean, they're real people, man. Life comes at you quick and people are moving on to different things.
Yeah.
So
one thing I want to also talk about, I just would be curious to get Fleshmonk's opinion on this stuff, is we haven't really talked about the commentators too much, but that is a big part of the show, like what differentiates this as well. And there's a big video out there, how Terrace House is like a let's play. And so just curious, like what your first kind of impressions were of that when you realized that this panel is a regular thing, and then how you feel that may have increased or decreased your enjoyment of the series.
So I remember I posted about Terrace House on like my Instagram story, and one of my friends said something like, "Oh man, that show's great. I just like skip every time they have the panelists though." And I was like, "What?
Madness!
What?
Madness!"
Blasphemy.
That is
I don't think that's the
heresy.
first time I've heard that, but I disagree with it.
I know
I'm
some
with you.
people that do that, and
Oh my
that's
god.
crazy.
And I think the thing is that the beginning summary is a little misleading. Like I almost wish that they wouldn't do the beginning summary, but I understand it's like a weekly show type of thing. Because that I think is what almost turned me off of it. And then I was like, oh no, wait, they're actually saying new things. It's not just like a re-edit of what they said last time. And I think that they're the most important thing about the show, because like I remember when I was first watching Boys and Girls in the City, and then when the original 6 people leave, I was afraid like, oh man, it's just going to be a whole entirely different show. But it isn't, because you have the panelists. And then that even happens with like Aloha State, and I'm sure it's going to happen like so on and so forth, where it's like Terrace House is Terrace House because of like all the panelists, you know, and like their chemistry and them together. And I think that's what really helps sell Terrace House for me. Like if you get attached to like certain people, you still stay on, because at the end of the day, like you love the hosts.
Yeah.
Well, I love them at least.
That's a good point. I love them too. That's a really good point. They're kind of like that grounding wire, right? They're like that home base. Like you said, everything else is going to be ephemeral. The house changes, the people change, a lot of things, the relationships change, but you always know that you have those hosts to go back to. And I think they're one of the best parts of the show. Whenever anything awesome or crazy happens on the show, I'm always like, I can't wait to hear what Yama-chan and you and all of them are going to say about it. And I can't think of any other reality show that quite has anything like that. But I think it makes the show even more modern, you know, in a way.
Yeah, and the thing too is like, the great thing about that is like it always feels like you're watching the show with someone, even when you're not having the panel there. And especially them being like the one constant, the one through line, that's kind of like comforting, especially if the way things are going in the house is not great. Like it's a very like eggshell sort of situation, or maybe just the general vibe in the house may be boring. Like you have people there to kind of experience that with you, even if you don't physically have people there to enjoy it with you, you know? And so that's why the panel makes it so enjoyable. And not to mention a lot of them are comedians and actors and actresses, so they're hilarious, right? So
Yeah. Like I can think of so many moments where Yama and Toku just go back and forth, like, and how many narratives they've crafted that are now on top of the Terrace House mythos that aren't real. Like how Yukiko's ex is dating the hospital director's daughter or something. You know what I mean? They're just like, that's something that wouldn't exist if it was just the 6 people in the house, right? So
I remember.
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I remember. Tokui is like, was it Tokui? He was like, oh, like Martha's friend, like she's the type to own a lizard. Or something.
Yeah.
Or like he just says that about like a random girl, and I was like, how do you come up with these things? And
Seriously,
man, I love him so much. I wonder what's gonna happen with him. I hope I know I have like 5 different shows that I can still watch with him on it that I haven't gotten up to, but knowing that he might not be part of like the future anymore is kind of tough.
That was one thing I did want to. I'm glad you brought it up, because that is something I wanted to touch on in part of this Terrace House therapy session here. Is that, you know, do you know about Tokui, like what the situation is and what your thoughts are about that? Like, what do you know about that so far?
It's like tax evasion, right?
Essentially.
Or something. And
yeah, essentially.
he was doing tax evasion for like 10 years or something like that, and like apparently it's like a really big deal in Japan or something. Like that kind of stuff is like really, really big, right?
To be fair, it's a big deal in America too.
It should be a big deal. It should be a big deal.
Sure,
But every corporation
illegal,
here gets away with it, but whatever.
The president, listen, I'm not trying to get too political, but the president won't even put out his taxes out there. Like, he's supposed to be our standard bearer. So in a way, it's kind of American to be secretive about your taxes.
Yeah.
Do you guys know who Wesley Snipes is?
Yes, I do. Passenger 57. Always bet on black. Hell yeah, I know Wesley Snipes.
So Blade, he evaded a bunch of taxes.
Yes, he
like,
did.
Too much. And then he just disappeared for a little bit because of that. And, you know, while, you know, yeah, it's a crime and it's illegal and it's awful, at the same time, it's like, you know, I wanted Blade 4, or, you know, I want Tokui to stay on the panel. Like, just put him in a box or something. Or like,
Put him in a box.
No, we're
Put him on the shelf.
We're Skyping to him live from jail. Hello, Toku.
Yes, like that would be fine.
Fleshmonk, I gotta challenge you on one thing, because most people, after watching Blade Trinity, do not say I want a Blade 4. So I'm just saying, like, most people don't
but Blade
have that
1 and 2
takeaway.
were dope. All right.
Blade 1 and 2 are pretty good. Blade 1 is the best, bloodbath and all. But about that, though, I mean, it's pretty much been definitively decided, he's going to be getting replaced. And he's like just off the show. And I think he's off of all his other shows, too, for the foreseeable future. And he might be still facing house arrest. Even though he paid back his taxes, he paid an extra fine on top of it. He did the deep bow. It is a very serious crime against the public in Japan, and the media swarmed all over it like piranhas.
I mean,
including us.
Yeah, no, but he's really big though in Japan. He's like his Rakuten duo, I think, is one of the biggest.
Yeah,
so they're
he's
iconic.
a big star.
Yeah.
I know. I'm just curious, how it's going to affect the show. I mean, we're going to find out here in Japan, I would think, relatively soon, who his replacement's going to be.
So are they replacing him? Has that been confirmed?
It's being speculated on who it's going to be, not if it's going to happen. So I'm leaning towards, they're going to replace him. But again, this is pure speculation. We'll find out soon enough.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's like that would be a really major turning point for the show for me, is like the panelists getting replaced. At that point, I think, I don't know, man. I don't know how I feel about that, except for the kid, because the kid's always...
Yeah, the kid's always change. The boy prince.
The prince.
Yeah.
The boy prince.
Tokui with his stories, though, that we were just describing, the way he really adds to the show. It's more than just 1/6 of the panel. He's a bigger part of than that. So I agree, like, it'll have a material effect on the way the show is. I can't even think of a word.
Yeah, will be.
Show. Will be.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because it's one thing to rotate cast members, but it's another thing to like mess with the through line, the constant that is the panel. I think, though, even if Tokui gets replaced, as long as the show stays good, I mean, everyone stays themselves, and the new if they get a new person has good chemistry with the rest of the panel, I think we'll be okay.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it'll still be a show worth watching.
I think they are such a huge part of why that show's successful. And an example I just thought of is the other show I can think of that's more closely I can compare to Terrace House is Ainori Love Wagon, because they have a panel too, right? And the reason why I can't fall in love with that show is because I don't really care that much about the panelists. So it really makes me realize, like, hey, they really matter, whether or not I'm going to stick with the show. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Is Tokui your favorite Fleshmonk, or do you have a favorite panelist?
It varies, but I don't know, man. I think Yamasato, is that his name? Yama,
the glasses boy.
Like he
Yama-chan.
is absolutely like my favorite. But
Nice.
like him and Tokui and you are just like, they're vying for like the top spot like constantly, and I can't imagine any one of them leaving. I mean, I have to, except because one of them's leaving, but.
For me, it's Yama and Tori-chan are like my top two favorite. Like, if either of them left, I would be very, very upset.
Yeah, but I mean, it's tough because Tokui is always like the one giving kind of sage romance relationship advice.
Yeah.
And he does take up a lot of the talking time on the panelist sections. I mean, I would say he probably takes up 40 or 50% of the talking time.
Yeah, and then he's constantly setting up narratives, right? He plays a lot of, like, he plays more than just his role, but he mimics other roles, right, to bring these stories to life. But I think when it comes to the panel, like, I think my favorite is Yama, but in a way, they all work together as this one pretty amazing comedy troupe, and that everyone kind of has their role, like their role in terms of, like, comedy dell'arte, right? Where, like, Tori's the innocent young one, and then Yu's the older woman who's seen everything. But Baba is just kind of like, she's just there. She doesn't say much, but when she says something, it's like, that's a zinger, right? And then you have the two old perverts, one of them who's an asshole, and the other one who's just horny all the time. And then the boy prince, right?
The boy prince. We need to protect him.
But he sits right next to Yama.
Yeah, he's Yeah, he's going to the dark side.
It feels like he's there to be like corrupted by Yama. Like Yama will like physically be like, yeah, right, agree with me.
Yeah,
but
agree with me.
Question, I guess, for the room here: would you guys rather see just Tokui's spot be empty, or would you want to see if someone could try to step up and fill those very big horny shoes?
You know what they say about big horny shoes?
Oh shit.
God, they have horny feet.
Yep.
Anyway, I think what will happen is it's going to be one of two things. Either, I mean, I don't know if has it been confirmed that Tokui is like, I mean, is he absolutely just like, I mean, he said entertainment everything, but that includes Netflix, I assume.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think it'll be more likely that they replace him, realistically.
But do you want
The
that?
question was, what do you want? Yeah.
What do you want?
But what do I want? I think I want them to replace him, honestly. Because I mean, they need that balance of like 3 boys and 3 girls on the panel. I think that I mean, I think they'll acknowledge that they'll never replace Tokui, or I think like, everyone kind of knows that they'll never replace. Like,
never replace him, but here's his replacement.
Yeah, but like, but he won't. He won't fill the same spot in the same
Big
way.
horny shoes.
They're going to bring someone else in, I think.
Yeah, I think that's the most likely thing, and I think I'd be okay with that happening, assuming the whoever they get does a great job.
Yeah, I think
it's okay if it's different.
Yeah, I like what you said. It's like I really hope they don't try and find a Tokui like a Tokui clone, like another person that will like fit his functions almost. And I think it's like they should bring in someone else who just adjusts it differently, or maybe just like just rewires the whole chemistry of everything. I think that would be more exciting and better than kind of like something that'd be kind of shameful where it's like, oh, okay, we can't get Tokui, but here is a person who's here to be him, but a little bit different.
Right.
Discount
yeah,
Tokui.
I've been saying that.
Great value Tokui.
They can't do. We do.
Costco Tokui.
We can't bring in like an Aunt Viv situation where they replaced her at the end of Fresh Prince and just like not even acknowledge it.
Yeah.
You know, so that's the kind of prevailing theme here. But yeah.
No, I agree. I think I would still want someone there only because Yama needs someone to play with, you know, and because his role, I mean, real talk, right?
Yeah.
Like in terms of just
He needs a
comedy.
playmate, yeah.
Yeah, because he has Yu who he plays with a bit where, you know, Yu kind of acts as like she's chiding him, you know, like, oh, hey, you're just being, no one likes you, you loser virgin, that kind of stuff, right? But Tokui, on the other hand, kind of enhances his humor. And like when they go super off the rails and wild, that's where they're at their best. And I worry that without Tokui, Yama will never be at his best again. So they need someone else who can like help him. You know, it doesn't have to be the same way, but someone that he can bounce off. You know?
Yeah. I also wish that indigestion.
Same.
I wish that they would I wish that they would keep like a person consistent in that like boy prince slot. Because I know that there are like multiple of them, but I think I've really started to gain an appreciation for Kentaro. And whether or not he gets replaced by the end of Aloha State, like I'm gonna be really sad because I think that like he kind of talks more in Aloha State, and then whenever he talked, I would be like, oh no, keep going. Like I want to hear more of you. I want to hear more of like people who aren't necessarily like the big 3.
Right.
And I think especially with Tokui leaving, like I think there is room for there to maybe be an expansion of Baba's role or the boy prince's role, and I think that'd be cool. That could be cool.
Yeah, Kentaro is my boy. I said that on the episode. He had the best takes.
Amazing.
He's really good. Yeah, so more push Kentaro. I'll say push him.
I mean, he's doing well outside of Terrace House now, which is good.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I have another question here for you, Fleshy-san.
I don't think he consented to be called that.
But where? So you just finished Aloha State, and so where are you going next? Like, where are you in your Terrace House journey?
I think my plan is opening new doors, O&D, and then if Tokyo 2019 to 2020 is done, then I'll watch that. But if not, I think I'm going to try and go back to the OG ones.
Yeah. Boys and Girls Next Door?
Yeah. They reference it so much. It's like I wish Netflix would just acquire it.
Dude,
Like,
tell
just
me about
pay
it.
the money.
Yeah,
pay the
seriously.
money. Get on, or like release it on DVD. I can't even find it on DVD. I have to go to like the nether regions of the internet to like try and see if I can watch it. It's kind of crazy. I gotta like
It is.
put my eye patch on and go to work.
Like,
Sail the
like
seas.
black market people are like, I'm looking for drugs, and we're like, I'm looking for Terrace House Boys and Girls next door.
Yeah.
Like-
Some of those fan subs, man.
You got some of that, scratching the neck. You got the fan subs.
Man, come on.
Yeah. No, I mean,
like-
but we do
sorry.
we do like the work that Costco subs do. They do awesome stuff. But
I mean, it's crazy that we actually have, I mean, what is it, 98 episodes that are fans translated? That's really awesome. That speaks well to the community that people would go to that trouble, because that cannot be easy.
Is that
and it
everything?
cannot be quick.
for Boys and Girls Next Door, it's a really
Yeah.
long season.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I remember like I wish that Netflix would just like, and I'm assuming this is because maybe like Terrace House isn't like in their marketing scheme or like evaluations as like requiring that much money, but I wish they would take the time and work into translating all the extra stuff. Because I saw like their YouTube channels, they have stuff that's like exclusively Japanese for like Aloha State, where it's like you can't even open the videos if you're not in Japan, where it's like extra stuff like behind the scenes or like extra scenes. And I'm like, wow, this stuff is so great. Like, I want to see this translated. I have no idea what they're saying. And then they have the same thing for what was it? Yama? Like, he has his own like YouTube channel.
Yeah, Yama
And I
channel.
wish that was in English too. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do too. Like, those are videos I really want to watch, and I even tried to, and I'm like, oh, I'll see if I can enjoy this. I'm like, no, I can't.
Because I can't understand it. Oops.
I don't know what you're
Yeah.
saying.
I've been studying Japanese for like 6 years now, and I'm still like, it's like 60%, but I'm not getting all the nuances I know that are important to like those conversations.
So I'm curious here. I want to kind of get us toward the home stretch here and kind of close out the show soon. But now that you've finished Boys and Girls in the City, as a show, as Tadaima, we've covered all of it. And I'm curious, is there maybe the one event that stands out the most to you that you love?
Ooh, that's like a Final Jeopardy question.
Yeah.
Or hate.
Or hate.
Or hate. Oh, no,
That's
no.
easy. Okay, I got that. Let's go.
I hate everything. Let's go.
We'll take both.
No, I think that, I don't know, like, I think this is everyone's, but Hansan leaving, I think is definitely one of those. And then I think Burns taking Misaki to wherever that place was, Yokohama, I forget where it was.
Yeah.
But kind of like rewriting almost her experience with that place, I think was like so like great, and it was so touching, and it was like really beautiful. And I think that that's like one of my favorite moments.
Oh, yeah.
And that, yeah.
Yeah, because I think there's so much. It's really cool because he wouldn't really have done that if Terrace House didn't exist. But
Yeah.
like because he had like the game tape, he was like rewinding, he was doing like the play-by-play, he was looking, he was like, all right, here's what I'm gonna say, here's what I'm not gonna say, here's what's gonna happen. He was like looking so intensely, and he fixes it because Hikaru is a dumbass. I hate him.
Yes. Thank you.
Wow. That's a really good point there. That's a really good example of a way that being aware of what happened in Terrace House in the house while you live there was used to a positive effect. Usually it's used, no spoilers or anything like that, but there's history of people just taking the wrong messages away, I think, from what they see in the house, and it maybe not necessarily being quite as positive. So yeah, kudos to Burns for that. I don't think he gets credit for that, but I mean, and luckily Masaki was receptive to it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they're definitely one of the better romances to come out of BGITC, I think.
So it's interesting about having like watched Terrace House and then that affecting people's decisions in the house. Not to give you any spoilers, but that's kind of a hot topic when it comes to OND. And I think what we'd be interested in hearing your opinions on that when you get to it. So maybe we're going to have a part 2 here with Fleshmonk eventually. If you're cool with that.
Yeah, that sounds dope. I'm down.
We really appreciate your time today, Fleshmonk, and thanks for coming on the show. And this is just, a great opportunity for more Terrace House fans to know more about you, because like you said, the stuff you're covering on YouTube is great. And I got to say, on a personal note here as well, my wife is a kind of like a third party fan of Terrace House. Like, she watches it when I have it on in the house, but we don't like sit there and watch every episode side by side necessarily. But she doesn't even, and she has like she has a hard time paying attention to stuff as well too, if it's not really like really enthralling her. But when I showed her your video online, she like watched the whole thing, and I just got to say, like, that is like a huge compliment from her. that actually happened totally, because she's not even that into Terrace House really, but she loved your videos.
Oh, thank you so much.
Absolutely, man. So yeah,
I really appreciate you guys having me on. This has been great. It's really cool. I don't know. Yeah. I'm rambling. I'll stop.
No, it's all good, man.
It's all good. We can maybe give you a Terrace House bump.
Nice.
Yeah, might happen. So yeah, again, we look forward to hearing your thoughts on opening new doors, and then again when you get to Tokyo 2019-2020, there's some stuff to talk about, let's say.
Some stuff.
Some stuff to discuss, absolutely. And so yeah, thanks again for your time, sir, and we look forward to the next one.
Yes, thank you.
And with that, I think that brings this show to a close. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, comments, or theories you want us at Tadaima to talk about, please feel free to email the show at questions@terracehousepodcast.com. And if you have any questions for Fleshmonk, you can go ahead and follow him on Twitter at @thefleshmonk, or you can check out his YouTube channel. If you just search Fleshmonk, FLESHMONK, you'll be able to find his videos. He does some Terrace House content, but also he does, video games content and anime, things like that. So if any of that interests you, go ahead and give him a little subscribe. Check him out as well. We will be back next Tuesday with a very interesting surprise for you all. I'm very excited for what we have to drop, and we're going to keep our lips zipped until it shows up on all the feeds. But we hope you're as excited about it as we are, because trust me, it's a big one. This has been Tadaima. Thanks for listening. Itekimasu. We hope you enjoyed our show. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to ding that bell to receive notifications when we publish brand new content. Follow us on social media and check out our brand new Discord server, linked in the description below.